Good evening, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to log in and join us for tonight's webinar. The focus of this webinar is to help you prepare for Classroom-Based Assessment 1 in RE. And of course, we're going to do our best to answer your questions and queries along the way. Should you experience any technical difficulties this evening, rest assured that the recording of this webinar will be available on the assessment page of the JCT RE website in the coming days. My name is Ayla Stravers and I am the team leader for RE. I would like to introduce you to the other JCT RE team members, Keith Young, Micheál Scully, and I wish to extend a very warm welcome to Gareth Fitzpatrick, who just yesterday transferred from the JCT whole school team to join us here in the RE team. There are four main parts to tonight's webinar: setting the context for CBA 1, planning and preparation before CBA 1, supporting student learning during CBA 1, and assessing classroom-based assessments. We will also have two pauses for questions and answers. We will do our best to reply to you all individually as well as the questions come in throughout the evening. I'm going to hand you over now to my colleague Keith, who will show you how to ask questions through GoToWebinar and how to download the handouts that accompany this webinar. He will then bring you through part 1, setting the context for CBA 1.
If you have joined us for previous webinars, you will be aware that we encourage interaction throughout the webinar. You may like to ask a question or a comment on the webinar, so please feel free to post questions or responses under the question tab on the right-hand side of the screen if you're using a desktop or a laptop computer. If you're using a mobile or tablet device, you will see a question mark icon on the top or on the bottom of your screen to submit questions or comments. We will be pausing at various points of the presentation to answer your questions and ask you to share with us. You may have questions after the webinar, or if you're watching a recorded version of this webinar, you can email info@jct.ie marked for the attention of the RE team with any questions you may have. When we were preparing this webinar, we kept in mind the frequently asked questions we have received from teachers, so hopefully many of your questions will be addressed throughout the webinar. You will also notice a handout tab where we have included a number of relevant handouts for you. We will look at some of these during the webinar. Please feel free to download and save them tonight, or you can get them again from our website under the Assessment tab. To begin with, we will briefly recap on the framework for junior cycle, which has introduced a dual approach to assessment that supports student learning over the 3 years of junior cycle. This dual approach reduces the focus on one externally assessed examination as a means of assessing students and increases the prominence given to classroom-based assessment and formative assessment. This change of emphasis arises from an acknowledgement that students learn best when teachers provide feedback that helps students to understand how their learning can be improved. A copy of the Framework for Junior Cycle 2015 can be accessed at www.curriculumonline.ie for your perusal. In terms of student learning, there are 4 scheduled assessment opportunities in which students engage in during their 3 years of study: CBA 1, CBA 2, the assessment task, which is based on CBA 2, and the final examination. Students also continually have other assessment opportunities across the 3 years through units of learning. Classroom-based assessments in the subject of RE are specified at common level. They are included with the time allocated for religious education, which is a minimum of 200 hours. All of these are reported on to parents, guardians, and students through the junior cycle profile of achievement. CBA 1, a person of commitment, is the first formal check-in moment that occurs in second year. The assessment guidelines published by the NCCA outline the classroom-based assessments in each subject area that are assessed by the teacher, based on the learning that has taken place within the context of a classroom. Classroom-based assessments allow students to demonstrate their understanding of concepts and skills and their ability to apply them in ways that may not be possible in an externally assessed examination. They are used in the assessment of learning in subjects and in short courses. CBAs are assessed by the students' teachers, and the descriptors awarded are reported to students and parents and guardians during the junior cycle using the normal school reporting procedures and in the JCPA. Prior to commencing the CBA, it is important that we are familiar with the process and the outline of what the particular CBA entails. We will now focus on CBA 1, a person of commitment. For this CBA, during a period of 3 weeks with support and guidance by the teacher, students will research and report on a person whose religious beliefs or worldview have had a positive impact on the world, past or present. It is important to note that students are researching and reporting on how the person has had a positive impact on the world. While students will add biographical information as needed, it's not intended that this should become a chronology of key events or a linear biography from birth to death. CBAs will be undertaken by students within class time to a national timetable. The relevant dates for RE CBA 1 from Circular 0076-2020 for RE are on screen. The window within which schools can complete classroom-based assessments and SLAR meetings is provided in Circular 0076-2020. Please be aware that these dates vary for different subjects and year groups. For second year RE students, the arrangements as outlined in the framework for Junior Cycle 2015 remain unchanged, with students being expected to complete CBA 1 this year and CBA 2 next year. The RE CBA 1 window opens on January 6th and runs until May 14th, 2021. The latest date for award of provisional descriptors by the teacher is Wednesday 19th May 2021, and the latest date for completion of SLAR meetings therefore and award of final descriptors is Wednesday 26th of May 2021. The SLAR meeting should take place no more than a month after the completion of the CBA, with the exception of SLARs of student work from CBAs completed during school closures, should that arise. Wednesday 26th of May is only the last date for those who have completed CBAs at the end of April. If students engage in CBA in January, then the SLAR needs to take place within a month of the completion of this date. Bearing in mind that we will need the NCCA examples of student work in order to have a SLAR, it is important to note that these are due to be published on www.curriculumonline.ie at the end of February. This will influence the commencement of the SLAR process, namely early March, when these documents become available. So ideally beginning the CBA process no sooner than a month before that. For further details on this, see our Frequently Asked Questions document available on our website or in the Handout tab. The unique context of this year is addressed in Circular 0076-2020. While there are no significant changes to RE CBA 1, it does state that students who are certified absent owing to COVID-19 can be facilitated to research, create, and complete their CBA remotely with support and guidance from their teacher. As per the Circular 0076-2020, SLAR meetings can be facilitated remotely, and we will look at the SLAR process in more detail in Part 4. I will now hand you over to Dr. Ailish Travers, who will explore what we as teachers can do before the 3-week window.
Thanks, Keith. Before you commence any preparation for classroom-based assessments, we recommend you download the assessment guidelines from www.curriculumonline.ie. The assessment guidelines are living documents, so you need to download them each year before commencing work on CBAs to ensure you have the current one. Pages 11 to 21 focus on CBA 1, so that is a good starting point for now. And a lot of the information we are taking you through tonight will be found there. While the assessment guidelines are written for teachers, there are also pages that are very useful for students. We have designed posters to illustrate some of these pages that can be shared with students. You will find them in the handout section of the webinar and on our website under the Assessment tab. The assessment guidelines explain that a person of commitment can be a person with religious beliefs or a person who holds a non-religious worldview. These definitions of beliefs and worldviews are from the glossary in the specification, pages 22 to 23. The glossary has some useful definitions designed to help teachers understand the language of the specification. We want to support our students through the CBA process, but this support begins in advance. On a practical level, we want to ensure that students are fully aware of what CBA 1 entails and the choices they have to make. So prior to the 3-week window, it is a good idea to introduce the CBA title. students will need time to think about who they would like to research. Students can consult with you to confirm that they have chosen someone suitable. So let's take a look at how we can support students in making a good choice. The assessment guidelines are a great starting point as they give a number of prompts to help students consider the variety of people they can choose to research. It can vary from someone known to them personally to very well-known religious or world leaders. On screen you can see the poster we have created from these pages. If you had the opportunity to attend our previous CPD day in person, we used the Padlet website to help gather and share ideas by working in groups to identify people of commitment known at a local, national and international level. This could be a very useful activity to do with students when they are choosing who they would like to research. If in doubt about a person a student has chosen, you can refer back to the aim of the specification and the learning outcomes that CBA1 is based on. The learning outcomes assessed will, to an extent, depend on the person the student has chosen, so they do not need to have a link to all of them. When we look at the learning outcomes that are relevant to CBA1, we can see the importance of following a non-linear, integrated approach to the specification, because ideally you will have engaged with some of these outcomes in previous units of learning. It is also worth remembering that the more opportunities students have to engage with the ORI elements of inquiry, exploration and reflection and action that underpin our specification, the more they will be building up important skills needed for the CBAs. Students can also choose to work individually or as part of a group. It is worth noting that there is advice in the assessment guidelines on group work that states, if students decide to work in groups, it is advisable that groups are not generally larger than 3 to 4 students, to ensure that all students can work effectively together. Also, if students are working in pairs or small groups, then it is important to ensure that the role and contribution of each student is clear and significant so that it can be assessed by the teacher. Research skills in ORE was the focus of our Spring 2020 webinar, and we shared our research posters and interview guides for supporting successful student research in ORE. These are all available on our website under the Resources tab. It is worth reminding your students of the knowledge and skills that they have already developed that will help them navigate their CBA research and reporting. It is a good opportunity for them to reflect on formative feedback you have provided for previous research and presentations. We have also updated the 9-step interview process to focus on conducting an online interview in religious education, which might be particularly useful during these times of COVID-19 restrictions. This is available in the handout section of this webinar as well. On our last CPD day, whether you joined us in person or watched the screencasts, we focused on the importance of sharing or co-constructing success criteria with our students before they begin work, so they know what we are looking for. For the CBAs, the conversation around what we are looking for is based on the features of quality. The features of quality for CBA 1 are found on pages 18 and 19 of the assessment guidelines. These can be shared and discussed with the students before they begin their CBAs. In doing so, you will be highlighting what good research and reporting will look like and the importance of reflection in the CBA process. In order to present their CBA, students will have to decide how best to present their learning. This is something they may wish to reflect on prior to the 3-week window as well. There are lots of options. They might choose a digital presentation, such as a video, podcast, or PowerPoint. They might prefer an oral presentation, which can be done in a variety of styles, such as a monologue, a speech, a newscast, or they might want to just do a written report, like an essay, or present in booklet format. Others might like to do a more visual display, for example, a poster. Students will arrive at different ways of presenting their learning. The most important point to emphasize here is giving students the choice. I'm going to invite Michal in here to talk about the importance of planning for all students in our classes during the 3-week CBA window. Prior to joining the ORI team, Michal was an associate with the L2-LP team and continues to liaise with them on behalf of the ORI team.
Thank you, Eilish. Choice for all students is a really important point. In Circular 76/2020, it states, there is an expectation that all students should, as far as possible, have the opportunity to present evidence of learning in classroom-based assessments. This includes opportunities for students engaging in Level 2 learning programmes who are in a Level 3 classroom. The circular also states, schools are expected to remove any barriers students may encounter arising from a spectrum of social, gender, ethnic, cultural, environmental factors, or from specific physical or learning challenges. Any arrangements should be in line with those the school has put in place to support the students' learning throughout the school year and are designed to ensure the students can demonstrate what they have learned rather than compensate for the lack of learning achievement. Therefore, students may engage in only one or both of the CBAs, which is then recorded on the Junior Cycle Profile Achievement. Students with learning challenges who are following Level 2 learning programmes may wish to engage in project work during the completion of the CBA 1 or CBA 2 windows. Or they may wish to complete a project on a person of commitment or a similar title through the engagement with a number of PLUs. We might pause at this point to reflect on what we mean by Level 2 learning programmes. Here we see an image of the National Framework of Qualifications. Junior Cycle Religious Education is at Level 3. L2LPs are available for certain categories of students with general learning difficulties or needs in the low mild to high moderate range of ability. L2LPs are designed for a small number of junior cycle students where the difficulties or needs of those students prevent them from taking part in some or all of the subjects or short courses on offer at Level 3. More information can be found in the L2LP guidelines as well as on the L2LP section of jct.ie. So how might we plan for students following Level 2 learning programmes in the religious education classroom? The religious education team has created a new resource for teachers. This resource aims to support teachers whose students are engaging in project work at Level 2 on a title of a person of commitment or similar title. This resource supports the students following the Level 2 learning programmes who may be working parallel to other students working in CBA 1 during the 3-week window. This resource can support any teacher working with students following the Level 2 learning programmes in the Level 3 or E classroom, students and their teachers engaging only in CBA 1, special education needs teachers who are supporting Level 2 students to complete CBAs or project work, some of whom may not be RE teachers, SNAs who may be working under teacher direction with individual students to complete CBAs or project work, or teachers who may be tasked with the planning and recording of students' Level 2 PLUs over 3 years. In this resource, we've identified PLUs which teachers may wish to use to plan a piece of project work for students engaging in Level 2 learning programmes, namely a person of commitment or a similar title. We've also created 2 editable planning templates, a planning template and a presentation of research and work template. Both of these templates can be downloaded under the L2LP drop-down in the planning section of JCT Religious Education on jct.ie. It is important to note that where students are engaging in project work at Level 2, the time constraints of the 3-week window for completion of the project work do not apply.
Thanks, Micheál. While Micheál was presenting, I was having a look at the questions and answers that have been coming in and going out to you individually. 1 or 2, I suppose, frequently asked questions that I might just share with everybody. We had a few again around what we've just been talking about, choosing a person of commitment. So hopefully we've given some clarity around that. A particular question that came in though was, are there any parameters or restrictions in who can be picked in terms of dates or anything? No, there's no restrictions on time or place when this person lived. Really, you're just judging on their suitability, on whether they have made a positive contribution to the world, and that you can demonstrate a link between their faith, belief, worldview, their values, and their actions. the assessment guidelines do say that the person has to be agreed in consultation with the teacher. So you do have the right to say if you feel someone isn't suitable, or that they just won't be able to find the necessary information. But there's no limits in terms of dates or times on that. Another question that we've got in, which is one that we're going to talk about a little bit later on, I suppose, in part 4 of the webinar, but I'll just mention it now because it has come in a few times. It's around giving feedback during the CBA process. Is that okay? And another question that links to that we were getting is around, kind of how much feedback or what's appropriate during the CBA process. So just briefly to say, absolutely, yes, you can give formative feedback during the CBA process. And we're going to look more at the CBA process now. But I think what maybe to keep in mind is that it's whatever's normal for you in your classroom and your teaching and learning with your students, because the title of our CBA certainly says during a period of 3 weeks with support guidance by the teacher. So you are involved, you are there, watching closely what they're doing and offering some advice and guidance. Just like always, students don't necessarily take on board all of our advice. That's okay. I suppose you're not trying to do the research for them. You're not taking over, you're not dictating, you're just supporting them on their research journey. As we've mentioned, hopefully they have maybe some formative feedback from previous research that they can draw on here. So they're not starting from scratch with this, and you're offering support and guidance to move them along. I suppose be cautious around, you're not trying to coach them to get to a particular descriptor. You're not trying to move them up a descriptor. You're just trying to, as you would normally, support students in their work. Certainly clarifying the title if they've gone off track or something like that with it. That's absolutely fine. I suppose the message around keeping things as normal as possible applies to some of the other questions we're getting around if a student is absent during the CBA window. Definitely keep the normal procedures in mind. If they're out just for a day or two and they can catch up and keep going, that's fine. If someone's out sick long term and they're not around during that 3-week window, that's okay. They won't get to do their CBA. But I suppose just treat it as you would with any other piece of work when they're absent. We also have a question from a few people around the oral presentation or presenting their work. So no, when we mentioned all the options for how they can present, report on their research, they can choose to do an oral presentation, but if someone hands in a PowerPoint or a poster, they don't have to do an oral presentation along with that. So some subjects obviously are different around that. Some subjects require oral presentations from every student. I think it's really important for us to keep in mind, even if we have another subject, the CBAs are unique to each subject, and also within CBA 1 and CBA 2 and subjects there can be differences. So your key task, I suppose, is to get really familiar with the assessment guidelines for each CBA. And we don't have that requirement in RE that students have to present. So if students do an oral presentation, that's one option, but you won't necessarily have every student in your class presenting their work. There's absolutely no harm in students sharing their work at the end of the 3-week window, because there's great opportunities for peer learning there, but it doesn't have to be everyone standing up and presenting. There can be other ways to share that work with each other and to see, I suppose, the great research that is going to happen during this time. It's something that students often enjoy, learning from each other as well. So we can keep that in mind, but no requirement for an oral presentation. Great variety of questions coming in. We are still, whoever's not presenting is back there with the rest of the team answering those questions. So do keep sending them in, and we'll do another little check-in at the end in case there's any other frequently asked questions that are coming in. We'll continue now looking at the 3-week window, how to guide students during that time. We are now going to look at how we can support student learning during CBA 1. On screen is the 4 stages for completing CBA 1 poster. This poster is designed based on the 4 stages as outlined in the assessment guidelines. It can be downloaded from the assessment section of the JCT Religious Education website, and of course it's also there as a handout in this webinar. We are now going to look at these 4 stages in some more detail. In undertaking the CBA, students might find it helpful to frame their initial inquiry around some guiding questions, such as, why is this person I have chosen worth exploring? Is there a specific aspect of his or her life or event that I will explore? What questions will guide my research? What do I want to find out? How can I ensure that my research is broad and balanced and draws on a range of perspectives? Although students are not confined to these questions that are found in the assessment guidelines, they can help students to focus on what they are being asked to do. They are not trying to report on someone's entire life. They need to narrow down their research to focus in on the positive impact the person has had on the world and identifying the underlying values that influence them. During the 3-week window, students are engaged in uncovering the values and beliefs and positive impact of the person of commitment. To begin their exploration, students might consider the following questions useful to help them clarify how they will carry out their research and to ensure they remain focused on the title. So deciding their sources of information, thinking about who they might be able to interview, really focusing in on the values, beliefs and worldview that shaped this person's life, looking for evidence of that, which can be the trickiest part, and then trying to show the link between the person's actions and their values. Finally, and most importantly, being able to really sum up how the person made a positive impact on the world, whether at a local or national level. From the features of quality, we can see a strong emphasis on student reflection. The students need to share their own personal reflections and conclusions from their research. Reflection included regularly in units of learning will help students develop this essential skill. Appendix A, as seen on the screen from the assessment guidelines, is a useful template that can be shared for student reflection on CBA 1. As we know, students may choose to report in a variety of formats. Each student's report will be assessed for their individual work against the features of quality. I'm now going to hand over to Keith to bring us through part 4 of the webinar, Assessing Classroom-Based Assessments.
Thanks, Ailish. The role of the teacher during the 3-week CBA is to clarify the title and focus of the CBA, observe student research, especially paying close attention to group work, and provide ongoing formative feedback. Teachers may use the NCCA examples of student work to clarify the meaning and interpretation of the features of quality to students. They may provide feedback to students at key moments during the 3-week period to move students forward, and also to provide supports for students with special educational needs as normal. The features of quality are the criteria that will be used to assess the student work, as best fitting one of the 4 descriptors. Teachers use the features of quality set out in the assessment guidelines to decide the level of achievement of each classroom-based assessment. Each CBA has its own unique features of quality, and all work submitted is judged to fit one of these 4 descriptors. As explored previously, there are 4 level descriptors of achievement in each classroom-based assessment: yet to meet expectations, in line with expectations, above expectations, and exceptional. It's important to note that we only use these descriptors for classroom-based assessments. After the 3-week window, the next step is to assess your own students' work. Teachers will, where possible, put forward a selection of work from the 4 descriptors: yet to meet expectations, in line with expectations, above expectations, and exceptional. Having to hand a copy of the assessment guidelines will help to inform your discussion when considering the features of quality of a student's work. The NCCA will provide exemplars across the range of descriptors, and these will be available on the website www.curriculumonline.ie. There is also an elective CPD that you might like to engage with, specifically focused on the SLAR facilitator. This can be accessed in the CPD section of the JCT-RE website under the elective CPD. The purpose of a subject learning and assessment review meeting, commonly called a SLAR, is to share and discuss samples of their assessments of student work and build a common understanding about the quality of student learning. The holding of the SLAR meeting is an important part of the assessment process, and teachers should receive training on best practice in this area. As teachers, we should not assume that the results of a group of students being assessed will follow any particular distribution pattern. The student's work has been judged only against the features of quality, rather than other students' performances or previous performances of work. Where there is a single teacher of a subject in the school, that teacher can be facilitated to participate in a SLAR meeting with another school. In the case of an Irish medium school, the teacher can be facilitated to participate in a SLAR meeting with another Irish medium school. The potential digital technologies to support such meetings may be explored. To support teachers in assessing students' classroom-based assessments, teachers engage in subject learning and assessment review meetings. At these meetings, teachers share and discuss representative samples of students' work and build a common understanding about the quality of their students' learning. SLAR meetings play a key role in developing a collegial professional culture and building up expertise about the judgments that teachers make about student achievement. After the 3-week window, the next step is to assess your own students' work. Teachers will, where possible, put forward a selection of work from the 4 descriptors: yet to meet expectations, in line with expectations, above expectations, and exceptional. You also need to have to hand the assessment guidelines to inform your discussion when considering the features of quality of a student's work. As previously mentioned, the NCCA will provide exemplars across the range of descriptors, and these will be available on the website www.curriculumonline.ie. When assessing the level of student achievement in a classroom-based assessment, teachers will use on-balance judgment in relation to the features of quality, which are set out in 4 level descriptors. When preparing to assess a student's work, it is recommended that you work from yet to meet expectations up to exceptional. Here you will see each descriptor for CBA 1 alongside the feature. The features of quality can be shared and discussed with the students before they begin their CBAs. To facilitate providing feedback to students during their engagement with assessment, the process of completing the classroom-based assessments should be viewed as part of teaching and learning and not solely for assessment purposes. It is envisaged that teachers will guide, support, and supervise throughout the process. Providing effective feedback is a crucial step into using the classroom-based assessments to support learning. Students will be informed of the descriptors they have been awarded once the SLAR meeting has taken place and its outcomes have been processed. However, as we know, effective feedback goes beyond the naming of descriptors awarded. Feedback of the strengths of the student's work and on areas for improvement can be used to support their future learning. In terms of teacher feedback, some suggestions for improvement may be easily addressable by the student. Feedback might also point to areas needing further attention or correction, or drawing attention to fundamental errors that need to be addressed.
Thanks, Keith. This is our final check-in for questions and answers. One that has come in that is worth sharing, I think, with everybody. If students choose to present their report orally, there is guidelines around that. So someone was asking about that. That's a great question. The assessment guidelines tell us that you can advise your students that their report should last about 3 minutes. So that's what's expected. If the students are working in a small group as well, the assessment guidelines point out that each student's contribution to an oral presentation should allow each member to make a meaningful contribution, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a 9-minute report. So you can read all about that in the assessment guidelines as well if you have a group doing an oral presentation. We've had a few questions as well about our upcoming cluster CPD. So we're meeting again for our next day of CPD. It's going to be online on Zoom. All of the details about the date for that is actually available through your school. So if you check with your school has got the details. Your school will be closed on that day, and you will be joining us. If you registered for RE as opposed to your other subject, you will be joining us on Zoom. It won't be a webinar. It's not like this. It's a full day. So it'll be a Zoom meeting where Hopefully you'll have a device with cameras and microphones, so we'll see you and hear you, and you'll see and hear us, and we'll actually be able to have conversations, and there'll be breakout rooms so you can be working together as well. We've designed the day that you won't have to be on screen for the entire day, so I would advise to have your specification and assessment guidelines printed out, so if we're looking at those, that you're not reading from the screen. And we're designing an interactive day based again on the feedback we received from our last CPD day, and we'll be looking a little bit more at CBAs, particularly with maybe CBA 2, and we'll hear how you're getting on with CBA 1 during those clusters as well. So they run from January to March, so a lot of you will be starting out on your CBA journey during that time. So we'll chat to you then. Hopefully we will see you then as well. We're really looking forward to that. But your individual school date, you can get that from your school. If we didn't get to answer your question tonight, you can of course get in touch with us to ask further questions. We also have the website. If you're watching a recording of this, certainly you wouldn't have got the handouts. So the website under jct.ie, Religious Education, the assessment tab, we have resources for classroom-based assessment 1 in particular, and also the subject learning and assessment review. The facilitation training for SLARs, they actually finish up tomorrow night, so if you really want to get that, you can probably still sign up for the ones that run tomorrow night. The details are available on our website. They're under news and events on our website. You register through your education centre for that training, but I know that the last night is tomorrow night. The previous SLAR facilitation training PowerPoint is under elective CPD on our website as well, so if you don't get to the live training or you want to recap on it nearer the time of your SLAR, we do have the PowerPoint and booklet on our website, as well as, and you can see it on the screen there, as well as the different kind of templates that you would need or that would be useful for your SLAR meetings. Just to remind you for further support that if you're emailing us with a question, the email goes to info@jct.ie, mark it for the attention of the RE team. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at JCT_RE, and you'll find all of our resources, including the recording of this webinar, on www.jct.ie. So on behalf of the RE team, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. We wish you all the best with your preparation and plans for CBA 1, and we look forward to seeing you virtually on Zoom in the new year.